The internet has made it such that companies are working hard to maximize their online presence. And as a digital content creator or marketer, you need to be on your best, which means by the time you're done, by the time you're done with the next series of lessons, you will be in a position to write a functional digital marketing contract that you can use as a template when you sign a client. You'll understand the principles that guide the formation of a contract. You'll also have access to downloads, both in PDF form and Word form, that you can edit if need be. Now, this is learning by doing, So the entire thing is based on that principle, learning by doing. So regarding your project, the lessons are step by step, meaning when you're done, you'll have finished a project in which I want you to think of yourself as a content creator and a marketer who has signed up a client, and you want to help them grow their online presence by repurposing their long-form video content into catchy YouTube shorts and Reels for Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. So you'll be writing your own version of a contract in which that is what you want to do for the client. If at any point, as you're continuing, if at any point you have a question, don't hesitate. So let's get started. Now, before we jump into writing a contract, I want you to understand how contracts work. So here's a simple way contract works. There is a party who makes an offer, Now, the offer can be an offer to buy something or an offer to sell something. Now, in your case, it's going to be an offer to provide digital marketing services. An offer is an expression of willingness to get into a contract on definite terms if those terms are accepted. So there has to be another party who accepts the offer. Meaning, if somebody else doesn't accept your deal, So if you approach a company and tell them that is what I'm going to do for you. I've seen your online presence and I want to help you grow, So I can help you have 150,000 views in a day or something along that line. And they say no, they've just turned down your offer, which means you can't get a contract because there is no deal at that point. So we have an offer plus acceptance, and that will give us an agreement. Now, the thing you have to understand, again, I'm just sort of summarizing these, There's a lot to that. If you have any issue with that, if there is something you really need to know about offers, rules regarding offers, you can just ask and we'll talk about that, So for now, I just want you to think. You start by making an offer, which can be as a result of negotiations and emails and phone calls. The point is, once you get to a point where they understand what you want to do for them and they accept, they accept your terms for that, now you have an agreement. So that agreement is still technically not legally binding. Well, it depends with the context. Why? Because something else has to be provided. That is consideration. Consideration is the price you pay in a contract or what you stand to lose in a contract. You see, the whole idea behind consideration is based on a simple principle. Quid pro quo, meaning something for something. Think of it this way. If you buy a phone, the phone you're using, you bought the phone, which means you lost money, the seller lost the phone. So both of you had to lose something in that contract. If you buy a house, you get the house, the real estate or whoever is selling that house gets the money, which means you lose the money in order to get the house, they lose the house in order to get the money. So that's how contracts are, In the case of your digital content marketing, what are you going to lose? Time, skills. If you're paying people salary, you lose all that. In exchange for the fee, the client is going to pay you and the client is going to get the benefits of that service in exchange for the money they're going to lose. So offer plus acceptance supported by consideration, now you have a contract. But still, the contract will only work if two more things are in place. Number one, if you are of a capacity to contract. Now, the capacity to contract will depend on your mental state, That is, if you're sane enough to get into that contract, so that you can't say, I was coerced into the contract. And whether that contract, is legal. Because if you're contracting to do something illegal, yes, it is a contract, but it's an illegal contract, which is not going to be enforceable. So those 5 things will help you to understand the contract. So there has to be an offer, which means before you just go online and like, I want a template for, no. You need to understand this, It's not just about what you're writing there. It's about what you've offered that client, What did you offer them? The terms of your offer, all that stuff. You have to know that, So it's not just about taking a template and editing it. So what was the offer? And have they accepted it completely? Because if they change any term in your offer, then that is not acceptance. That is a counter offer. Anyway, the principles regarding contract offers and all that, these are things that if you're interested in, there is a discussion area there. You can just ask a question and I'll answer that. So offer plus acceptance gives you an agreement. You provide consideration, that is the price, or you agree to provide consideration in future, because like in this case, they may agree to pay you in future. Okay, that gives you the legal, okay, contract. And the assumption is you are of a capacity to contract and whatever you're doing is something legal. So now that you understand those principles, okay, let's start writing your contract. Most people assume that you have to be harsh or you have to be very formal in a contract. Well, there is no rule which says you can't be polite in a contract. So to introduce your contract, here's something you can start with. So in this case, we have our digital, okay? This is just a sample contract for educational purpose. So what do we have here? Now, the first thing that you need to understand is who are the parties in the contract. Remember, we said somebody's going to make an offer. So in this case, the assumption is you are the one who made an offer, okay? Because it could be the case that they approached you. Sometimes clients just approach you without, they just show up at your business and they're like, we'd like these services based on what you've seen, blah, blah. But in this case, I'm assuming you're the one who went to the client. So anyway, that doesn't really change the nature of the contract. Well, it changes it because it can be a contract. In this case, you're offering the service. They're not hiring your services. So you're the digital marketer. Okay. So what's your company name, address? Okay. Zip code if need be, email address, phone, and date. Date, very important. So these are the parties. So that's the party. And that's you. And then you have the client and you have to ensure that you have the client details. By the way, there's a Word version of this is PDF, right? So you can download it along with the rest of whatever it is, the rest of the resources. Now, look, normally most contracts will just start with something like this. They'll just say this digital marketing service agreement, okay, which we shall later refer to as agreement, is entered into on this particular date, which is important because remember, all contracts have a start and an end date. That is what defines the whole period of the contract. So date between who? Between your company or your agency, okay, which in this case, you're the service provider, and the client's company. So going forward in that contract, we'll just refer to them as the client. But, in this case, I'm just choosing to be nice. So you can start by saying, thank you for choosing our company. So your company as your digital marketing partner, we want to ensure that, we can provide the best possible services within the scope of your plan. So this is something you obviously talked about before you got into the contract. So that's why I said, you just don't go straight into the contract, okay? You need to talk to the client. You need to have things summed out because these are the things that are going to be to form the terms of the contract. So depending what exactly do you agree on, all that stuff. So based on whatever it is that you agreed on, okay, that is what you're going to provide for them. And then, so by agreeing to this document, in this case, this contract, this document, the client has retained your company to provide the services which are going to be defined later in the agreement. Because there's going to be a scope, okay? There's going to be an area in that contract. There's going to be an area in the contract that explains the scope of work. And in that area, you're going to define everything that you're going to do for that particular client. So by agreeing to that, okay, they've agreed to the terms set out by the agreement, as well as, they retain a lit, which they've paid for. So that is just the beginning part. So what do we need here? You need to know the parties. You, okay, and the client, their details. And it's important for you to understand that the way you phrase the details really matter. I mean, look, in this case, there is their name and all this stuff, right? Which is really important. But in some cases, you may not really have that. And so it's important to understand that if somebody, for example, if somebody calls themselves ABC Limited, and but in the contract they've written ABC without the limited, okay? And then it turns out that same person has, there's a company, and then they have a sole proprietor business called ABC. You see, the ABC is not the same as ABC Limited. So, you probably discuss issues with the company, but you ended up contracting with the person, and then you do the job for the company, and then the company says, we don't recognize this party. So in contract, details are important. Now, since you're starting, I want you to assume that now you've just signed up that client with whom you are supposed to work together, and you want to help them by repurposing their long form content into shorts. So you want to change their long video form into shorts. Okay, so start by what's their name, what's your name, and okay, introduce them to the contract. So write the first part of that contract. Okay, so now that you've defined the parties to that particular contract, what is the aim of the contract? I mean, some contracts tend to just skip this part and go straight to the scope, okay, to the scope of work to be done. But since this is a template, I mean, I don't know which part you're going to use or not. Let's just talk about that. If you don't want to use it, you can skip it, but you know, I'd rather you use it. And so the question is, what is the overall aim of your marketing contract? And in this case, you're supposed to give the overview, since the details will come later under the scope of work. And in my case, since your case, you are repurposing, you're doing the video marketing, right? So in my case, let's assume we are working with a client, you are helping them with their website, right? So let's assume that's a thing. So that's what I'm going to be writing on my end. And it doesn't really matter. The whole point, they're all digital marketing, business, right? So here's something that probably that contract will have. So the purpose in this case will be like this. Okay, so we already handled our client. So in this case, our aim, let's get that one there, blue, yep. So now is the aim of the contract, okay? And what are we aiming for? So the aim of the agreement, okay, and what we'll deliver where applicable, because it's not always the case that you're going to provide everything. I mean, it's important for you to understand that clients will want to pay less and get the most. It's just the nature of economics, okay? The buyer always want to pay less and get the most. The supplier always prefer to supply less and charge more. But ignoring that, so you're telling them this is what we're going to do for you, or this is what we can do for you, okay? Depending on either what you'll have paid for or depending on the terms. So in our case, we are telling them we'll boost traffic to the client's website, and then you're going to insert the website, raise your brand profile, okay? Improve the speed and functionality of their website, improve conversion rates of the fixed traffic to boost sales, identify and monitor the client's competitors, all right, or in this case, the competition, and introduce new ideas that could help them with their online visibility, as well as provide consultancy services. Now, the key thing is that when the client asks, how will I know that those things are done? So you're telling them that the current vital metrics will be benchmarked upon the commencement of this agreement, okay? And so you're going to compare basically what you've done with where we were, or where we are with where we were. But some of these things, okay, we also have to tell them that to achieve all these, so your company, okay, will undertake the work set out where? In the scope of objectives, okay, in the scope of services. Because remember, these are just overall stuff that you're going to do. Overall. But then the specific aspect of all these, the specific details, we are going to mention those ones in the scope of work. So that's something that is important for them to know. So just telling them, here's what you're going to do. So like in your case, okay, in the case of your, in this case, what's the project you're doing? Remember, you've hired these guys, okay, rather you've been hired by this client, and you've looked at their YouTube, you've looked at their work, and you're saying, okay, look, shorts, reels, TikTok, blowing up channels, all right? So we can help you to do that. In some cases, you're going to even do voiceovers and all that stuff. So just list the general things that you're going to do for them under the aims and objectives of the contract, all right? So what are you going to do for them? So make a list of that. Remember, it is a project. It doesn't really mean that was what you're going to do. So be creative, okay? You don't have to think, just be creative. All right, so write that, and then we move on to the next part. So now it's time for us to tell the client what you're actually going to do, specific details regarding what you are going to do for them. And you really want to be, you really want to say stuff here. Of course, you also have to be careful, because if you remember, it's a contract, okay? So the things you write there are the things they expect. So in as much as it's always a good idea to over-deliver, because then it means they become your repeat client, you also want to look at how much they're paying you, okay? And things of that nature. You're running a business, which means you always have to ensure that you don't promise so much that at the end of the day, you're making a loss in that contract. Unless that was the intention, which could make business sense, but it generally doesn't make a business sense, if you know what I mean. So under the scope of work, what do we do? In this case, so in our case, okay, remember, we are working on a website. So what do we tell the client at this point? We're just telling them that based on everything we promised above, okay, we will provide resources to undertake a range of services for you in respect of their website, which may comprise of, we're saying may because you don't know what you've paid. Maybe we are structuring the payment in such a way that if you pay for this, we do this. This is everything you're going to do. But if you don't pay for this particular part, you're not going to do it, okay? So, which may comprise of analysis document, okay, including things like keyword analysis, web analysis, competitor analysis, SEO, as well as paid per, cost analysis, all that stuff, right? So all these are things relating to their website that you're promising to do for them. Now, then you go ahead and break them down like the technical SEO, okay? So what will that comprise of? We let them know, okay? Are we creating content for them? We tell them, okay? Is it just creation? Is it optimization? What about their brand? Because that one is based on their reputation. What do we do about that? We write that one for them. Remember, this part is what they're actually paying for. So you really want to be explicit there, okay? Issues to do with conversion rates, issues to do with brand management, we bring all that out, okay? What about emails? So again, if you are doing email for them, how many emails are we going to do? That is something we need to agree on. Paid advertisement, where is the money coming from? Those are things that we are bringing them out there, as well as account management, because at the end of the day, these people will need to see reports, okay? All that stuff. Do we give them like templates or about text images, all that stuff, security. Now, notice, web design development changes that seem to be minor, we will do that for them, right? But because this is legally binding, we go ahead and say whatever constitutes minor work, okay? What is that? Minor work constitutes work that can be feasibly completed within the retainer limit. So anything that goes beyond the amount that they are paying us as a retainer, that is something they're going to have to pay for. So, in as much as you're promising, remember, there's a limit that they're paying you. So anything, and some clients can be very interesting. Like you agree on doing one thing, and then once you start working, they're like, we'd also love for you to change this video. I mean, you said you can repurpose for us, right? Yes. We are starting a podcast, and it's audio. So we want you to change all those ones into audio, good quality audio for our podcast. It's like, wait, we only agree that you're doing short form content for you. But it's easy in the process of doing that. You can just change it. So you have to be careful about things like those ones. So what exactly constitutes a minor work and what is a major work and what are they paying for? Those are things you want to bring out in the scope of work. So now go ahead. In your scope of work, you can make a list of things like thumbnails. Okay, you're going to develop those ones. Voiceovers where need be, captions, animations. I don't know. The point is, just think, if you're going to make shorts, what are the things that really matter in shorts? And if I don't know, well, look, it's just learning by doing. Just be creative, okay? I mean, no one is going to punish you if you write the wrong thing. The idea is the more you get used to writing these things, the easier it becomes for you. And like somebody who's every time they want to get into a contract, that, I need to find a PDF template download. Yeah, that thing's not going to help you if you don't know what you're writing there. That's the thing, okay? It's like when somebody says, I'm going to use AI. If you don't know what you're searching for, if you don't even know if the answer you've been given is correct, then the thing is not helping you. So it only helps you if you have an idea of what you're looking for. So practice, okay? So write your scope, the scope of work that you're going to do for this client. Now, so far we've told the client what you're going to do for them. And since you're just putting everything in black and white, you also have to tell them what you're not going to do for them, okay? Because some people assume that if you are a digital marketer, they're not going to do everything, okay, that has to do with anything they need. Like somebody might just say, we need soft copy letterheads since you are a designer, whatever. The point is, some people, that's what they are. So it's time for you to tell them what you want to do for them. So let the client know if they have any third-party cost, like mailing software, special plugins, and so on. Let them know if they are to provide content, okay? What type of content will you expect, okay? The nature of that contract. If the client provides you with content, make sure they know how to provide it. So, because that's the thing. Sometimes they just write stuff and then they send you a picture. So it's like, here's what you're going to do, here's what you're not going to do. And if you do this is how I want you to do it. So it's time for you to tell them what is going to be excluded in that contract, or the costs that are not going to be included in the contract. Because again, look, if you're working with a client, they might assume that you, being a digital marketer, you're going to do anything that has to do with the word digital in it. We want letterheads, we want whatever, okay? So it's time for you to let them know that there are things which want to be included in this deal. And if they're to provide you with content, what sort of content should they be providing? What is the format? So this is what that will look like. Right, so excluded services. In our case, again, remember, in our case, we are doing the website. In your case, you're doing something different. So just tell them, this agreement does not include the following services, which can be provided. You know, that's important because you're always going to be upselling, right? Which can be provided as additional services. So for now, based on what you've paid, we're not going to do web design development. That is not minor. Remember, we already discussed what is minor here. Okay. We're not going to be doing email marketing. You're not going to be paying. So email marketing spend cost. You're not going to be paying for that. We'll just work within the budget that you've provided. Any third-party costs are going to be incurred by you. All right. So that's the thing. You have to let them know of that. I mean, the same thing goes for you. Like, if they want you to push their channel, okay, through maybe paying for ads in YouTube, paying for ads in Facebook, paying for ads in Google, the question is, who's going to pay for that? So you need to let them know of that. All right. So tell them what you want to be doing for them. Okay. Maybe some of the things you want to be doing is you want to be shooting fresh content. Okay. You'll probably be doing voiceover, maybe, but you want to be shooting fresh content. If they want you to shoot fresh content, maybe you include that in the contract in a way. So just tell them that. So what you want to be, based on whatever they are paying, this is what you're paying for, this is what you're getting, this is what you want to be getting with that amount. And if you want it, then pay more. Right. So let them know of that. Regarding the payment and the period of payment, this is going to be fairly straightforward. What you're telling them at this point is, when do you expect to be paid and what are your payment terms? So that can look something like this. Like in our case, we just say that this particular agreement, okay, this agreement will commence on this date. Remember, we said all contracts must have a starting date. That way we can know when they will end, and continue until terminated in accordance with the agreement. So we are going to have termination. And so you tell them the amount payable each month by you will be, you give them a breakdown of the amount. So sometimes this could be one of the value, or rather one of the thing that makes your contract special. Maybe come up with a plan that the client is comfortable with, but that's entirely up to you. Okay. Are they paying you monthly? Are they paying you weekly? Whatever it is. Okay. Now, these fees are payable in advance. Okay. Before you start the work. Okay. On the commencement of each month of the term of the agreement are set out in this agreement, because remember, you're offering services. So if you offer the service and then they pay you, that's okay. But sometimes what if you offer the service and then they don't pay you? So usually at the beginning you want to do something and then they see what you're doing and then they pay you. And then after that, now they pay as you continue the work, because now you've already offered them a proof of concept. So the contract hours and fee are subject to negotiation based on client's request and suggestion made by, again, your company. So it's like, come on, this thing is not cast on stone. It's not like a fixed thing. We can always renegotiate this stuff. Okay. That is why in the contract, we're going to have a part where we can talk about variation, like how do you change stuff in that contract. Again, most people tend to think that a contract, once it's set, it's set. Anything created by an agreement can be ended by an agreement, can be changed by an agreement. That's pretty much the nature of contracts. So think about that, right? Now, talk about it. How are they going to pay you? Because remember, you're in business. And you also, that is the reason why you usually talk with the client, agree on things before you draft them. Because whatever it is that you agreed on is what is going to make up that particular contract. So again, get to writing, okay? Write your part in your contract. How are you going to be paid? Okay, what are the terms? What is the period? When do you start? All that stuff. Now, we did mention that there are scenarios where the client will be required to provide you with some information. So it's important to ensure that you have everything you need to work, because people just assume stuff. Like, those clients who tell you, I want a contract, or rather, I want a website that does 1, 2, 3, right? And then, they don't tell you anything about the content. They forget that a website needs content, okay? Or somebody tells you, I want you to help us to grow our YouTube channels. Like, cool, you do realize videos are what is supposed to be in YouTube, right? Or if you're doing music, there has to be some audio. So where do I get these things from? Like, you're the expert. Okay, so am I shooting that? Okay. If you're doing that, if you're the one who's going to be shooting that, they need to know that. Okay, you need to bring that out in a contract. What am I talking about? If the client will provide images, then specify if you'll need to write it. Okay. Make sure it's provided in a way that you can copy paste if that is what you're going for. So in this case, okay, you're going to have to put this down in a contract, and it will look something like this. So you're going to have a provision that states that where the client is required to provide content, so in this case could be photo, data, whatever, necessary for any project, okay, the source of material must be clear and legible. So the client is responsible for furnishing all the pertinent information, for furnishing accurate, truthful, and complete information necessary for your company to perform or to complete any service. Now, notice, I'm not saying that this is what is going to be always happening. I'm just saying if that is a deal. Because some clients will just say, look, we are new to this. You guys are good at whatever it is that you do. Come, help us. And then, you consult with them. Okay, you probably show up with your camera, you shoot a few things, you tell the guy with the phone, I want you to be using your phone. When you're doing this thing, can you document it? So, I want it in this sort of aspects, okay? 1080, Full HD, whatever it is, set up the phone for them. And then they can be doing that, and then you just come collect stuff. So if that is what you're going to be doing, good. But if that isn't what you're going to be doing, also let them know. So in this case, you can write that, okay? Again, remember, some of these things, it's not everything I'm saying that has to be in your contract. You're just going to pick what you think is relevant. But since this is your class project, you just have to continue writing them. Come on, the more you do this, the easier it becomes, okay? So now we've already established that at some point the clients, the clients do know what is not going to be included in the contract. But what if they have some additional work? What if they have something that they want you to do for them? Let the client know what extra work will cost, okay? Unless you're free doing something for free, you're okay with doing something for free because it's part of your marketing. So in your contract, the additional work, this is how you're going to phrase that. The client, so remember, we did say that they know that the client, right? So the client understands that additional work beyond the scope of this agreement must be scoped and priced separately, okay? It will require a separate approval or a separate purchase order. So you, in this case the client, understands that we require fair and realistic written notice to attend to requests and projects outside the scope of the services. So they just can't email something and then say, but we told you that last week that you need to be doing this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we'll pay you. It's like, nope. You need to understand that, okay? So you understand that we may require additional clarification of any extra work to meet your expectations and provide the best possible quality of work. Let them know that, all right? Again, remember, it's economics. There's a demand supply. The buyer wants to pay less and get more. The supplier wants to supply less and get paid more. I mean, everybody's driven by something in this case, and it's going to be their interests versus their position. So ensure that that is clearly stated in the contract, that anything extra, remember we talked about things that you want to be doing. So if it's part of things you want to be doing, it's going to cost you. So let them know. So in this case, if there is anything that you think, part of whatever it is your project, just put it down and then you continue. Again, remember, there's going to be a PDF version of this, okay, contract that you're working on together, as well as a Word version, which you can just edit if you need be. It's going to be in the resources. So let's move on to the next part. Now, intellectual property, who owns what? That is usually important when it comes to most of this digital content. You normally see this. Somebody puts a video on YouTube, it's taken down. Somebody produces music, those beats are owned by whatever, art. So in this case, you really want to let the client know, okay, when it comes to issues to do with intellectual property, copyrights, patent, things of that nature. What do they own? So bring that out in the contract. Let them know that, because there could be moments, like imagine you're working with, let's say you're shooting content, okay? And, you've used some of your content in the client's video because you're trying to spice up something. And then later, they see you using the same thing to advertise. And then they're like, no, we own those things. See, that is something that should have been sorted. So this is how you bring that out in the contract. So regarding intellectual property, you let them know that all creative assets, so including but not limited to graphics, copy, content, created by the agency, so in this case you, will remain the exclusive property of the client upon full payment because you're making it for them. That is, if you're producing it for them, it will be theirs. The client grants the agency a non-exclusive license to use the client's brand materials, okay, for the sole purpose of providing digital marketing services to the client. Now you see, this is different because in this case, you could be producing something for them, especially exclusively for them. But there are scenarios where that's not really the case. Like, well, think about if you're shooting documentary. So let's say you partner with another channel, right? So you're shooting documentary, and then you can host them in your channel, and they can also host them in their channel. So it could be a partnership. So in that partnership, you could say the content is exclusively ours, but you can also put it in your YouTube channel. This particular channel, anything other than that is a breach of this agreement. So, most of these things will just depend on the nature of agreement and how you phrase it. So you always want to know, you always want to bring out the issue of intellectual property. Who owns what? Okay. You see, that's the thing with digital marketing, man. You really don't want to spend a lot of time creating something only for somebody to hit you with a cease and desist. So when you've already started work, it's like, stop, and going forward, don't even use this material anymore. Like, you've created your YouTube channel. Let's say you've been doing it 5 years later, it's growing. When you're starting, no one is noticing you. It's growing. You have like 300,000 subscribers, and then you get that notice. Here is a notice telling you that you can't use this material anymore. And at that point, it's like 90% of the material in your channel. So you want that, okay? You want to ensure that the contract says this person owns this content. And so if they bring that up, you just say, okay, here's the contract. Here's what you agreed on. All right. So write that. Remember, it's important. These small details are important when it comes to digital marketing. It's not just a question of putting up a picture and then boosting it on Facebook and then like, you're good. Yeah, you're good as long as you're small. But then as you grow, things start becoming scary. So let's continue. Now, this issue of confidentiality is important because when somebody gives you access into their business, they expect you to help them grow that business, right? But what if you're just there to spy and then you go and sell the information to their rival? Because that can happen. It's important. It's very important for you to let the client know that that is not part of what you're doing. You're not in that business to destroy it. You're in the business to help them grow. And so that's the reason why and it's also important for you to remind them, to let them know that in addition to maintaining confidentiality, okay, you also need to market your business, which means some of their materials, you might use some of their materials, things like case studies, things like reviews, things like testimonial to help boost your credibility. So it's one thing to tell them that you're going to maintain confidentiality, and then when you're running a case study and maybe you mention them, they tell you, nope, you shouldn't have done that. So it's important for you to know what sort of things can we use in marketing? What sort of things are we never going to be talking about? So you bring that out in your contract in this manner. So in this case, something like, under the provision of this agreement, both parties agree to keep all confidential information, which will include things like business strategy, customer data, proprietary information, strictly confidential, okay? And you also tell them what will happen if you break that promise. That means there's going to be some legal repercussion. But you remind them that from time to time, okay, you may publish case studies or client feedback, okay? And as you're doing that, obviously you might seek their approval, or you may not seek full editorial approval. Of course, you liaise with them, you let them know that, okay? So that's important for the reason that I've just mentioned. It will help you with your marketing, because remember, you also need to grow. So that's something that you want to check on. So as you go through these, don't forget to have something like this. Okay, something that's just letting them know that from time to time we'll also need to use that information to market, because you also need to attract clients. Okay, so you let them know of that. So that is a thing with confidentiality and non-disclosure, because you don't want to go on exposing the clients. I mean, it's unethical, it's illegal. Okay, so that's something that you want to really have there in that particular contract, because the reverse can also be true. Okay, you could be the big company working with a small client, and then they end up exposing your proprietary software that you're using in your digital marketing. So it's not always the case that you're the one who's going to be disclosing their information. They could just do the same for you. So either way, somebody can suffer as a result of disclosure, okay? Running your mouth in the wrong crowd, and that just brings the entire business down. Right, let's move on. And by the way, as you're continuing with these things, if there is any question you ask, you don't just be there frustrated with your question, like, oh, I'm not getting this. No, if you have a question, you ask. That's the whole point, learning by doing, okay? So, right, remember your project, okay? In your case, it's repurposing YouTube content. It's not really YouTube content, it's just long-form content. It could be something they did in a podcast. It could be a documentary. The point is you're repurposing their long-form content into short-form content, and then you want to use that one to market, which means there's posting, there is, tweeting, Xing, I don't know, how do you call it? All that stuff, right? Just to help them grow their online presence or their channel or whatever it is. So see what you have. Okay, so now let's talk about what will happen if things don't go according to plan in that contract. If there is dispute, how do you plan to resolve it? Because going to court, litigation is not always a good idea. In fact, that should be the last thing you're worried about. So you need to bring out, you need to talk about that. What if you disagree? Because disagreements are always going to be there. What if you disagree in that contract? How do you plan to resolve it? So you can have that written, okay, drafted, written in your contract in a simple manner, something like, any dispute arising from this contract or from this agreement will be resolved through mediation. That means you talk about it, okay, with both parties agreeing to participate in good faith. But supposing that one fails, then you can go ahead and pursue legal remedies within a competent jurisdiction of, and then depending on your geographical area, you can write the jurisdiction. So which court, which area you're going to use. I mean, which depending on the state and where you live in. But again, I'll just say most of the time you want to resolve these things through mediation. See, alternative dispute resolution mechanism, okay, whether it's negotiation, mediation, conciliation, arbitration, which will cost you money, but it's not always a good idea to just run to court. Because the thing is, in court, both of you are going, the only person who's guaranteed to win in a court is the lawyer, because they are paid either way. Okay, so your lawyer, you'll pay your lawyer even if you lose that case, just as much as the other party. So you don't always want to have litigation as the first thing you do anytime you have a problem in a contract. Okay, let's move on. So now let's talk about bringing that entire contract to an end. And I did say that anything that is created by an agreement can be terminated by an agreement. In fact, there are 5 main ways in which you can end a contract. You can perform it. Okay, you do what you're supposed to be doing. The contract is over. You can have frustrating events which bring further fulfillment of that contract to be impossible. These are force majeure, okay, things beyond your control, floods, the act of nature, political instability, basically the things that would render that, will make it impossible for you to continue that contract. Okay, those are frustrating events. Okay, you can have a breach of a contract where somebody simply decides not to do what they're supposed to do in that contract. And also you can have an operation of the law where the law says from now henceforth this nature of contract can't happen because of blah blah blah, and then you can agree to end the contract. So in this case, the thing within your control is agreement. Okay, agreement and performance, but in this case, agreement. What if you want to end the contract? So how do we do it? So you want to write that one down. So something like, first of all, by signing this agreement, the client commits to the initial period of 3 months. Okay, this is to allow for long-term blah blah. The point is you're just telling them that, look, you can't walk out of this agreement, okay, within 3 months. You have to stay in for 3 months. Now, supposing you walk out, okay, that's okay. So termination of this agreement, okay, by either party is permitted with written notice, right, of this number of days. And if you do so, the client agrees to compensate the agency for services rendered up to the date of termination, which actually means if you want to walk out here, there's going to be that thing called contra merit, okay, where you, in relation to the work done, pay us in relation to the work done. That means you're not even bothering, we're not even asking you to pay for the breach of a contract, okay? Let me write that properly. For the breach, for the breach of a contract, which means failing to do what you're supposed to do in a contract. We're not charging you for that. Just want you to pay us for the job that you've done. So bring out the termination clause or the cancellation clause, so they know that if you want out of this contract, this is what we have to do. Remember again, these things are not cast on stone, man. You know, you can get into a contract, you don't like it, and then you get out. So it's just a question of, can you handle the cost of getting out of that contract? Because in some cases, it's not going to be cheap, okay? But in your case, you're not complicating things. So termination clause. Now, one more thing that is also important in that contract is the idea of, what if you want to change something in the contract? How do you go about doing it? Because we just can't have a contract in which you can't change things. You're stuck with the contract the way it is. So there is modification. So if any party at any point feels like there is a term which they don't like, there is something they want to introduce in that contract, how do they go about doing it? Well, that is why you have the section which talks about modification. In this case, you can have something like this. So this agreement may be modified as deemed necessary by a written agreement. That's important, between your company and the client. So just tell them if there is something here that you want to change, okay? Because you always have verification, alteration, all these things in a contract. So if they want to do that, they just write. And if both of you agree to that, then you amend something in the contract and you continue. So it could be some job that they prefer. So it could be either, it could be anything. It could be some action they want you to change. It could be some job they want you to take care of. So all that stuff. Okay. So you just let them know that, write it, let's agree, and then you can change it. So at that point, you've pretty much done the entire thing. So the only thing that is remaining is for people to sign the contract, and then things can start taking place. Again, before you look at that, I just want to remind you that, remember, this is learning by doing, so I hope you're following along as you continue. And if you have any question regarding, you know, contractual issues, just comment about them, okay, in the activity area, and then we'll talk about all that stuff. Now look, it's one thing to just have a template, okay? It's another thing to understand that a contract is a legally binding agreement, which means the question is, what exactly did you agree on? So the things you do before the contractual award, okay? You know, issues like making offers, issues like negotiations, okay? Agreeing on the terms, okay? If it's something complicated like request for information or request for quotation, all that stuff, and then you agree. So as you continue with that negotiation phase, those things, you write them down, because those are the things that are going to form part of the contract. So it's not just a question of, what do they want? They want us to shoot a video? Yeah, I have a camera, let's go shoot. And then you start working, and then it's frustrating. You want to be professional. You sit with the client, you talk about, what are your specifications? The client, okay, what do you want? Are these things you need to conform with, or are they just functional specification? Things that, as long as they do what you want them to do. What are your key performance indicators, okay? How will you know that everything is on track? Write that stuff down. Mode of payment, all this stuff, you get as much information out of the client as possible, and that is what you're going to use to sum up the contract, okay? So here's what we've done so far. So we've written the entire contract. We now know who the parties are, okay? We have the parties, we have the aim of the agreement, we have the scope of work, okay? So these are generally what are we going to do. This is exactly what you're going to do, the scope of work. And things that you're not going to do, we've shown them. The payment terms, as well as the contract period. Issue to do with materials and information that will help us to work. How to handle any additional work in that contract. Issues to do with intellectual property, okay? As well as whether or not we are going to disclose or not disclose, or confidentiality issues. We've also brought that one up there. If you have a problem, how are we handling that problem in that particular contract? How are we going to terminate this contract if need be? And supposing you want to change anything in that contract, how do you go about changing it? You see, the contract is fairly comprehensive in this case. And then finally, the parties now can be, we can agree. This contract is going to run for that number of months or whatever it is, make our signatures, and we have a deal. So that's pretty much the issue with, that's a simple way. That's a simple way of doing a digital marketing contract. So in your case, remember, you are also doing yours. The assumption was that you've just been hired by this company that want you to help them grow their their online presence by repurposing their long form content into shorts, okay, and reels, be it for TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, okay. So that is not just about editing. There is editing, and then there is making sure that people actually engage with the content, keeping the metrics, understanding the metrics, having the data, writing the reports, all that stuff for the company. So that's what you're doing. Right. If there is any question, do let me know. Remember, you can download the PDF version of this. You can download the Word version of whatever we've just done, that contract. They are in the resource area. I'm Moses, and I'll see you in the next lesson.